So I'm going to have to wing it until they get it. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's going to do it. Excellent. Sorry. Yeah. But just to warm you up, so we have this presidential election coming up. So I've got a little riddle for you that I hope you'll take and share. It is the year of erectile dysfunction, of course, and another one. So I'm thinking of two rock groups. Okay, R-O-C-K. Anybody who's heard this from me, because I know a lot of you, you're ineligible to answer. They each or both consist of four men, okay, four men, and in each one, both of them, one of the four men has the first name of George, and the other was assassinated. What's the obvious answer to the first rock group? Louder. Okay, right, good. Anybody who hasn't heard from me, the second rock group, there's another one. Ah, I love it. So take this, because I just kind of have a pattern brain. So ready? So the second rock group, rock is a pun. Okay, the second rock group is not a band, a musical band. Thank you, over there. Louder. Mount Rushmore, isn't that wonderful how human beings just put things together? Mount Rushmore. Okay, the sound of two hands clapping, thank you. Yeah, George, that guy to the left, and you may notice the only one where they began to carve a bust there, and then they ran out of money, 1937. There was a big push, this is in my history book, for a fifth face, Susan B. Anthony, but they didn't have the money. The dark clouds of World War II were looming, so it didn't get done. But Mount Rushmore, and the other guy was assassinated, the guy to the right. So I thought you would enjoy that. So today, just the wide world of language. This happens to be the book. I adore writing them. I was editor-in-chief of my junior high school literary magazine and my high school newspaper, and it just always felt right. And I have lived a life in which long ago I've blown up the distance between who I am and what I do. It is such a joy. And out there, after the show, I think there's about a 10 or 15 minute intermission, but after, if they keep the place open, I'm just delighted to answer any of your questions because that's what happens on A Way with Words on public radio. It started in San Diego. So my first partner on the show and I went in to interview. They said, we're thinking of a language show, come on in an interview. We walked in, he was 20 years younger than I. They ushered him into the interview room. They took one look at me and said, you, Dr. Lederer, you have the perfect face for radio. They were right, and it was just great fun. And I walked around St. Paul's School yesterday, and thank you. My three children went there, got a heck of a lot better education than I did, and I think most of you know the place, but the children, you teach in the morning, you coach in the afternoon, if you're capable, and I really enjoyed that, and you kind of supervise their bedtime at night. 35 years in Concord, and just an amazing time. So let's do some language here, and I want to start with language in general. So, and then I'm going to get to the Anglish language, and we'll get to that. But let's start with the language in general, and what a miracle it is. First of all, how did we acquire it? And we are the only creatures who ride this planet that have generative, creative language that changes over time. Now, we know whales have languages, and elephants, and chimpanzees, and so on, but that doesn't really change and get creative and generative. But ours, oh my gosh, grows and grows. By the way, in English, we passed 1 million words. This is not a joke, in 2009, because Google Global Search tells us, and in September of that year, we hit 1 million, and we keep on growing. And that's the way it works. So there are some theories, many of them bogus, as to how language began. So allow me, I don't quite memorize the way I used to. So if your mythos is the Bible, let's look at what it says. That majestic, are you hearing me okay, everybody? All right. Closer is better or too loud? Too loud, okay, right here. Yeah, you know, if a megaphone makes your voice bigger, what does a microphone do? Yeah. So I have a whole chapter in here with like about 100 of those. They're great fun. So at any rate, as I read this, listen for the frequency of verbs of speaking and saying. And God said, I'm emphasizing, let there be light, and there was light, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and God called the firmament heaven. So note, it isn't just that God snaps his fingers and things come into being, or they do, but then he names them. And a little bit later in Genesis, what happens when God creates Adam, various translations, but basically humankind? And if this mic gets too far away or too close, let me know, please. But you're hearing me okay, right? Thank you. All right. So, when God creates Adam, and out of that ground, the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. So Adam does what God does, and that is he names things. And we are the namers, we are the speakers. It defines our humanity, and they're doing some incredible things now about language and cognition. Marvelous things. I'm reading right now Steven Pinker's book, The Stuff of Thought. Even though the Spoonerism for that is peeve and stinker, but I don't tell him that. Reversible initial consonants. If your mythos is science, you believe that there were many hominid species, and ultimately us, we, Homo sapiens, wise man, and we are the only ones that seems to have, there are some questions about the Neanderthals named after the valley. Oh yeah, actually, sorry, here we go. Yeah, Adam the Namer. So that's my artist, Brett Radlick. He's been with me for about 5 years. You know, Adam and Eve were the happiest couple on earth because, let me just think for a minute. She couldn't tell him how many other men she could have married. And he couldn't tell her how much he loved his mother's cooking. So, I'll just read from the last chapter here. The birth of language is the dawn of humanity, and each is as old as the other. The appearance of language made us human, and our humanity ensured the survival of language. We human beings have always had language because before we had it, we were not fully human, and the sounds that escaped from the holes in our faces were not fully language. Not only do we possess language, we are language. Just incredible human adventure. So Homo sapiens go back about 300,000 years. They keep pushing it back. And I'm not talking now about hominids that came earlier or primates or the creature that crawled out of the sea, just the 300,000 years. So think about your ancestors, and you have a lot of them because early on you'd be lucky to make it past childbirth. You'd be lucky to get past 5. A few of us got into our 20s because nature wanted us to reproduce. And very few of us got to 80 as I am. I'm 86. Very few. But I am part of a new generation that lives an additional life. What an incredible privilege, an additional life. My father passed away, shuffled off his mortal coil at 59. I am very soon going to have lived half of a second life. Incredible. But at any rate, think about all the people who had to get together, if you know what I mean, down through the generations to make you. If any of them had, quote unquote, not end quote, unquote, gotten together a day before or a day after, or an hour before or an hour after, you might have a different color eyes, a different height, different hair, different intelligence or emotional IQ, maybe a different gender. And yet here you are. What are the chances that you are you and I am I? And notice I do put that nominative into the predicate. St. Peter hears a knocking at the gates of heaven, calls out, "Who's there?" And a voice says, "It is I." St. Peter says, "Oh, goody, another English teacher, come right in." And by the way, any of this, if you email me at Richard H. Lederer, you have to put the H in, Lederer, Lederer, it means leather worker. It's the most common kind of last name, and it's a occupational. Patronymics are penultimate, but we're the ultimate. And the second ER is not stuttering. It's one who, a baker bakes, a farmer farms, a Lederer happens to do leather. But at any rate, Shakespeare, well, what's that about? Well, he had an ancestor in the military who shook a spear. That's the way it works. I don't have my names book here, but I'm happy to send it to you. But names incredible. So the odds that you are you, only 400 trillion to 1. You heard that. Wow, I just heard, wow, that's a palindrome. I've got the mic in my hand, but you see, wow, this is this whole world out there if you look. So each letter is a palindrome. I mean, it's forwards and backwards. It's from Greek. Left-right symmetry. Wow, the O has quadrant symmetry, so it's bilateral by definition. And guess what? You turn it over. This is going to be tricky. You turn it over, you get mom. That's called an ambigram. These words, letters that bounce around. And I'm not going to do that today because it's very difficult to do with the PowerPoint, but I've got it there. So what's not to be thankful for? I mean, just the fact that you're here says something about your life, you know, that you take advantage of these cultural things, so you're really lucky to be you, and I'm honored to have you here. So that's a little bit about language. Whoa. So think about the miracle of language, first of all, that we have it. But when you hear a foreign language, and I'm fluent in French, Russian, Italian, Thousand Island, vinaigrette, ranch gorgonzola, green goddess, and honey mustard. I speak Esperanto like a native, by the way. But at any rate, when you hear a foreign language that you didn't grow up with, what do you hear? Right? You can't make out what the words are, and yet babies acquire this relatively massive vocabulary very swiftly, and they know where the words begin and end, just for starters. They also learn rules, as you did growing up, that nobody teaches you in class. So I'm just going to give you one of many, where you never get these in an English class, and I never had a stitch of grammar before I went to St. Paul's, and I said, I've got to teach myself this. I know I have a reading and rhetoric student or two out there, but I got to pass that torch. So how do you define a pronoun? What is a pronoun? Call it out. A word used to replace the noun. I know the silence there. And so if you're wrong, what do you have to risk? What are you risking except your reputation and self-esteem? Otherwise, no problem. So a no noun replaces a noun, but not quite always. So here's the longest word in English dictionaries, Oxford English Dictionary and our American dictionaries, okay? Pneumono-ultramicroscopic silico-volcaniconiosis, 45-letter hippopotamonstrosesquipedalian word, meaning a really long word for black lung disease. Pneumono-ultramicroscopic, you can sort of see that there, silico-volcaniconiosis. All right, now listen to these sentences. Let's try a pronoun. So, pneumono-ultramicroscopic silico-volcaniconiosis, right? Okay, let's look the word up. Okay, fine. Let's look up the word. They're both experienced native English, right? No problem. Pneumono-ultramicroscopic silico-volcaniconiosis, let's look it up. But how about this sentence? Let's look up it. It doesn't work, does it? It's the nature of that kind of verb, and there are so many examples. Nobody teaches us in school, but at some point we learn not to say it that way. In addition, I am guessing that almost every sentence you hear tonight in this pleasure palace sounded that, well, never mind. Did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree? Almost every word you hear here, every sentence, you've never heard before. Not quite in that form, and you understand, I hope, everyone or pretty close. Isn't that amazing? That we are constantly bombarded by new sentences we've never heard, and there's some mechanism in here, and I could give a whole talk on that allows us to understand. So that's a little bit about language in general. So now let's go to the English language and a few comments about that. Okay, forward. Yay. So again by Brett, and you notice there, you're all going to get in. And I'll get to that shortly, but all of those languages will, because we are the most cheerfully democratic and hospitable language in history. I'd love to give a whole talk on the history of the English language, but that would take all night. So let me get to this stuff. Well, actually on that, English, let's take one thing. 300 languages in ours, and I'm just going to give you a smattering of what I've written here. Afrikaans, aardvark. Carib, hurricane. Basque, anchovy. I'm kind of going alphabetically. Dutch, my wife Simone van Eggeren is here. She is Dutch. And my Dutch treat. And our wonderful years together are just full of saucy Hollandaise. I want you to know that. Well, what the heck? I'd make puns about the Dutch, wouldn't you? Some of my pun pals out there, and I will get to that. Hey, David Brooks, are you here? Because he does that puns column. David from the Concord Monitor. David? All right. I know his address. I'm going to come to his home and do this. Egyptian, oasis. I'm going through. German, kindergarten. Hebrew, camel. And these are just a few. So let me just see here. Japanese karaoke, sorry, this is a little bent, etc. Malay ketchup, Norwegian shingle, Persian bazaar, Polish mazurka, on, and right to Yiddish, glitch for Yiddish. We take them all in. 300 languages. And therefore, we take them in and we grow our vocabulary. I happen to like the transitive use of grow like that. And people say, God, English must be so hard. And they're thinking of the spelling. Because we are so democratic, we have all these words that are spelled rather oddly. And so we have what's called the phoneme-grapheme chasm. So for example, you take the word baseline, B-A-S-E-L-I-N-E, 2 syllables, right, begins with a B, change the B to a V and you get Vaseline. And you notice not only do you add a syllable, but you've changed 2 of the vowels. It's like woman, women, again, a double vowel change, strange. But yeah, it's so hard to learn. And guess what? More than 70% of about 1 billion, incidentally, people didn't speak language growing up as children, as babies, and then growing up as children. It's a second or third or fourth language, and they will tell you that English is rather easy. So let's just take the verb conjugation, walk, I walk, you walk, he, she, or it walks, we walk, you walk, they walk. Just one little walks, a little everything else is the same. Not many languages do that. No real gender endings, just a few. It's not that hard. So what happened is the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes in 449, in AD 449, Anno Domini, I should put that first, they invaded Britannia, and they brought their language with them, and the land became Angleland from the Angles, the primary of those tribes. North German, Southern Scandinavian. And just a small group speaking it, and yet it has become the worldwide language, the lingua franca of the world. Back in 1599, Samuel Daniel wrote, "And who in time knows whither we may vent the treasure of our tongue, to what strange shores this gain of our best glory shall be sent, to enrich unknowing nations with our stores, what words in the yet unformed Occident may come refined with the accents that are ours." And the answer is that English has become the treasure of our tongue, the most widely spoken language ever. So that's a little bit about English itself. Now, mic test, are you hearing me okay? It really sounds good up here, really. Sure, it's working. Okay. So, let's go to etymology here. Let me see what we have here. Yeah, so I'll tell you about this. So an etymologist is somebody who knows the difference between etymology and entomology. And that would bug me, of course, but so obvious. Its word origins and so on. So for example, as I'm walking out, some people say break a leg. And what you probably think that is, and it may well be, is sarcasm. I want the best for you, break a leg, meaning I don't want you to break a leg. But an equally cogent etymology of that is, I want you to take many bows, and the line of your leg will break as you do it. You see my bending. So that's one example of etymology. So let's take another, and I don't know that I can see you. Hands up if you know why the Canary Islands are called, oh, thank you, let there be light. Why the Canary Islands are called the Canary Islands. Just call it out. Birds. Okay, well actually it's Caninae, as in canine, insulae. It's island of the dogs. They don't have dogs there, but they have a creature who kind of looks like dogs. Okay, so that, you think it's canary, but it isn't. So here's my next question. I want to talk to you about the Virgin Islands. Well, I mean, because there isn't a canary on the Canary Islands, I'm talking about the Virgin Islands. I missed one of the lines there. Okay? So it's the same thing with the Virgin Islands. There are no canaries there either. So a little bit on etymology, I adore it, and it's just so fun chasing them down. So another thing about vocabulary is what you see here, that, well, aren't you a homely spinster? Homely used to mean good at the home, and I think the Brits use it that way, and spinster, woman who spins, that S-T-E-R is a feminine ending. A baker bakes, a Baxter bakes, is a woman who bakes. Brewer, male who brews, brewster, female. Dyer, man who dyes cloth. Dexter, woman who, just a very interesting pattern. And spinster, because a woman spinning and so on, and at some point, you know, remember that game Old Maid? I'm so glad we don't play it anymore. Such a terrible name, but at any rate, so that's the story there. So here's the story here. In the year 1066, there was a great fire in London that destroyed half the city and 3/4 of St. Paul's Cathedral. Sir Christopher Wren, the original designer, some years later was asked to rebuild. 3/4 of it were destroyed. He began in 1670 whatever and completed his task in 1710. And you know what that cathedral looks like. Queen Anne, the reigning monarch, came forward, gazed at the magnificent edifice, and said, Sir Christopher, this building is awful, artificial, and amusing. But back then, awful meant full of all. Some of the Paulies out there will remember God's awful hand in one of the hymns there, meaning awesome. Artificial meant full of art, and amusing from the 9 muses meant amazing. The words have gone downhill, just as you see here, and there is something about human nature. Sometimes on occasion the word will rise, but in general they go downhill, and there's something, and then we need new words to replace them. So a little bit on etymology there. I'm saving the gesture hat for when this gets funny, and it will at some point. So let me move on, please. Again, thanks to the AV department for all this. Makes it possible. Okay, let me just see here. Somebody shout out the time for me, please. What time is it? 8 o'clock, my God. As one frog said at the other, time's fun when you're having flies. Yeah, and you know, you laugh and you get that because that's the way your brains are made. So as a little introduction to punning, I'm going to do something with you. So I'm going to start with some puns, and then you're going to see how you are wired to understand humor. So, sorry, at this point I put the jester's cap on. Come on, so pages stay. Good, yay. Surely you jest. Here we go. So, I bet you a lot of you are here because, as David Brooks said, we're going to have some puns. So, not so, but we're doing that these days, aren't we? That's about 10 years old, and we have that coordinating conjunction with no clause before it. So, I just did it. Here we go. I'm going to give you a taxonomy of puns, okay? That's 1839, Martin Van Buren, our 8th president. Better, you think? Do you? All right, thank you. Really? All right, let's see. That's good. I like. All right. All right, and get it up close to me. All right, is that sounding better? Thank you over there. Okay, a little definite. I've been elected International Punster of the Year, the fastest punslinger in the world, and I compete in national puns contests, and I love it all. So somebody wrote, a pun's the highest form of wit. It stimulates the brain a bit. It simply takes a word that's tame and picks one more that sounds the same. And that's essentially what happens. A pun, and now you will know the definition, is this much meaning in this much space in an effort to be funny, meaning it isn't always funny, but you're trying. This much meaning in this much space. So a good pun is like a good steak, a rare, medium, well done. That's 3 words with 6 meanings. And don't you be beefing and stewing about my meaty puns, please. But the point is, look at all that within that, but that much meaning. And I'm going to give, those are called homographs, meaning you don't change the spelling. You may know I come from a poker family. I taught my all 3 of them, and 2 of them, Howard, the Professor Lederer, and Annie Duke, were some of the first stars in on television for poker. In fact, Annie became so famous that she was chosen. Well, no, I have to do it another way. There's somebody in this vast space whose daughter was fired on national television by an American president. Now, some of you know who this is. It's my daughter, Annie Duke. She was the winningest woman in poker history. This is working, right? Oh, my God, thank you. It's so good to be relieved. I really appreciate it. I will give you a discount after you buy 10 of my books, after 10 books. But at any rate, so she was on Celebrity Apprentice in 2009 with, to be president, Donald Trump. So my daughter was fired, and her mom and I were there. And she got fired. Joan Rivers won, and some of you may remember that. But here are some more homographic puns. So with daylight saving time, there's no S at the end. It's not a bank. Saving. So spring forward, fall back, or the other way. But notice, no change in spelling, but it's a pun, spring and fall. Have you heard about the cross-eyed teacher? She couldn't control her pupils. And of course, the pun is on pupils. So what happened is the ancient Romans, initially pupils related to pupa, butterflies will flutter by, that kind of thing. And then they moved it over to a child in a classroom, a young student. Well, then when they looked at each other's eyes, they could see themselves small. And so now the aperture became also a pupil, and that's the winding ways of etymology. Thank you. How about if I move this a little, because I don't want to intimidate you. I want to take the id out of intimidate, and let's get intimate. I love audience participation. Is this sounding better? I love it. So it's a poker family, and I want you to know that marriage is like a deck of cards. You start off with 2 hearts and a diamond, and pretty soon you want to grab a club and use a spade. 4 with no change, they're not easy, they're the hardest ones. 4 with no change. So, some more. Adam and Eve were the first couple to violate Apple's terms and conditions. Moses was the first man in history to use a computer. He downloaded data from the cloud to his tablet. Oh, and if you want any of these, now we're going off to Keene tomorrow, Simone and I, and my sponsor there is the development director, Cheshire County, Rick Swanson, and he was in my media class in 1973 in the Advanced Studies program. And you know what that program means all around the state, and we're just so proud at St. Paul's to have started that. Okay. But again, I taught them only 51 years ago. Time sneaks up on you like a windshield on a bug. Splat. But I will tell you this, I'm a writer, and I know that often the best chapter in a book is the last chapter, and sometimes it's pretty long. So some of you have to look forward to that, and I adore it. It's a nice change from being young. I am so old that when I was a boy, the Grand Canyon was a gopher hole, Moby Dick was a minnow, rainbows were in black and white, and the Dead Sea was only sick. So now we go to homophones, meaning they sound alike, but they're not spelled alike. And some of you may have grown up with what's black and white and red all over, except it's READ, and it was a newspaper, and then it became a penguin at Miami Beach and a nun falling down the stairs and bleeding or whatever, but you remember that. So here are some others. And again, different spellings. Have you heard about the successful perfume manufacturer? And I hope I made clear before, anything you want, if you write to Richard H. Lederer, I'm going to be digging out when I get home late Friday, you're going to get it, because that's what teachers do. We're compulsive sharers. And you're all here. I mean, it was supposed to rain tonight, right? And it didn't. I kept saying, I hope the rain keeps up. Please, rain, will you keep up, and then you won't come down. And it happened. So have you heard about the successful perfume manufacturer? Her business made a lot of sense. Now, you see the three spellings there? Right, so she manufactured perfume, so made a lot of S-C-E-N-T-S. She was successful, C-E-N-T-S, that's called beheading the first letter. And then S-E-N-S-E, it was just inappropriate. It's a nice one. Many more. So two ropes walk into a Wild West saloon. The first rope goes up to the bar and orders a beer. And the bartender, we don't serve ropes here at this saloon. The bartender whirls the first rope around, throws it out into the street. Awful. Well, then the second rope says, I better disguise myself. So he ruffles up at his ends to make him look bigger and rougher, twists himself into a circle to look bigger. He comes up, I'd like a drink. And the bartender says, are you one of them ropes? And the bartender says, I'm afraid not. But you see how you're made to do this. No, really, as human beings, we do that. Otherwise, it would be, this is a crazy man, take him away. It doesn't make any sense. Now we have the double sound pun, and that means not only a different spelling, but a different sound with the two words or more. A good pun is its own reword, and you know what you're thinking of, but again, you see, it's two sounds, it's different words. What do you get when you cross a gorilla with a clay worker? A Harry Potter. Notice slight change in the first. Do you know what you get? Some of you will know this, I think, when you cross an elephant with a rhinoceros. Elephino. I'm happy to send any of these to you, and it's not, oh my God, Rich Lederer is so busy, I don't want to bother him. Bother me. That's what teachers want, bother me. And you'll get it, well, once I dig out in about 48 hours, but it's going to take a little while. So this one is close, but what do you call an empty hot dog? A Halloweenie. So you see a little bit of the change there. Yeah. So let's try this one, and then let me just see if we're getting close to the break. But I'll be back. I used to work at a hardware store. Where's the stuff? I'll be back. Okay. Let me just think. No, I'll tell you what. Stay with me. We'll just do, and then we'll take the break. But I want to come out front. And I love you. I adore you. You are the jewels in the crown of my teachership. I've been doing this my whole life. I have blown up the distance between who I am and what I do. So many of you have heard of, he said ecstatically, Tom Swifties, if you know that one, but never mind. Here we go. Let me think for a minute. You've heard of Mahatma Gandhi, late 19th, early 20th century, attorney, activist, anti-colonialist. And if you've seen pictures of him, you notice that he was very thin because he went ascetic. He denied himself the earthly pleasures. So that includes never don footwear. He wanted contact with the earth, so no sandals, no shoes, and a very sparse diet, so sparse that it gave him very bad breath. So you know what the result is? You have a super callous, fragile mystic, hexbihalitosis. Let me just check things out here. Oh, well, actually, we have 3 or 4 minutes. This may go a little over, and I'll shorten the second part, because that's when we get funny. So to show you how you're wired, all right, I'm okay at this distance? All right, they're spoonerisms, I'll bet you some of you know, and they're reversals of initial consonant sounds named after William Archibald Spooner, who was dean, just a 60-year record service at Oxford University, a distinguished teacher, professor of literature, history, divinity, and philosophy. But what's the next one here? But that's okay. I like winging it. I just want to see. I don't think this. All right. Yeah, there we go. So we'll put that up there. Notice that. Yeah, that's one of the pictures. So at any rate, because of a touch of albinism, he reversed initial syllables. So he was a devout Anglican, and one day he went in the church and a woman was in his spot in the church. He approached her and said, "Maud me patum, you are occupying my pie. May I sew you to another sheet?" But you understand what he said, don't you? Because that's the way you're wired. He lifted his tankard of ale to Queen Victoria, the reigning monarch, and he said, "3 cheers for our queer old dean." Right, you're made to understand that. So I'm going to close here with a little spoonerism. Probably going to take me a minute or a few minutes after, but not much. So here we go. I'm going to tell you a Terry tale about Prinderella and the Saints, which means... Right. Okay, so Simon says, remember, only when I do this. Okay, you give me the answer, but otherwise don't. So, once upon a time, there lived a gritty little pearl, and her name was Prinderella. Well, Prinderella lived with her stick-it-wet mother and her sugly isters, and they made her pine all the shots and shans. Good. Wean all the clindos, and do all the wordy-dirk around the house. Well, one day the king issued a proclamation that all the Gelderwillers in the kingdom should come to a Drancy Fest ball. Well, Prinderella didn't have a Drancy Fest. All she had was an early drag. Such a shirty dame. So off went the stick-it-wet mother and the 3 sugly isters to the Drancy Fest ball. Right, you're with me, aren't you? I can tell. With this burst of silence, but you're with me. While Prinderella stayed home, and who should appear but Prinderella's Gary Fodmother? And I didn't do that, but thank you, that's okay. But I meant to. Right. And she said, now, Prinderella, you go off to the Trancy Festival and you have a good time, but you gotta be back by the Moke of Strid night. So off went Prinderella to the Drancy Festival, and boy did she have a good time because she met a pransome hince. And she pranced with that dince. Notice one of the consonants changed because I introduced a new word. She pranced with that dince all night long. And at the Moke of Strid night, Prinderella ran down the Stalus Peps. All right, now this is a reversal. I'm going to tell you what she did, and you give me the Spoonerism. She dropped her slipper. Very good. Slopped her dripper. You know, the older I get, I do that myself. Oh, well. Don't sue me for defecation of character, please. Well, the next day, the king issued a proclamation that all the Gelderblers in the kingdom should sly on the tripper. Well, the stick-it wet mother slide on the tripper, and it fidden it. And the three sugly isters slide on the tripper, and it fidden it. But Prinderella flipped her soot, slipped her foot into the tripper, and it fidded it. So Prinderella and the dince got mutgarried, and they hived happily ever laughter. And the story of the Mari is, if you want to meet and marry a pransome hince, you want to be sure to slop your dripper. God, I have to say, without sitting ovation there, it reminds me of French-Canadian mayor of Manchester at one point honestly said there was that. Thank you for giving my wife and me the clap. I thought that was very cute. See some of you out there, they have cookies and so on. And thank you so much to the Walker Lectures. You may know 1892, a bequest. I think maybe Timothy died first, but John can probably help me with that. And Abigail Walker, $30,000, nice chunk of change back then, well invested. And we have these Walker Lectures and music, and free and worth every penny. And we're 1 in 400 trillion. What is there not to be thankful for? I'll be back in 15 minutes. Thank you. Okay. No, they had a flashlight for me, because I'd go ass over tea kettle. If you don't know what that is, it's the waiter with the hot soup and boom, falls and the ass is above the tea kettle. So real quick, nothing works for me, just some more puns, you seem to like them. So just the selection from about 150 here. It's about the jobs, nothing works for me, and I'll just do a few. If I can. I became a lumberjack, but I couldn't hack it, so they gave me the axe. I was once a set designer, but I left without making a scene. I became a baker, but it turned out to be a loafer and couldn't make enough dough. I opened a donut shop, but I soon got fed up with the whole business. After that, I tried to be a tailor, but I just wasn't suited for it because it was a so-so job, depleting and depressing. Well, I could do this for the rest of the time, but I won't. But I will do just the last part. I became a statistician, but I got broken down by age, sex, and marital status. I was once a Scrabble champion, but I became inconsonant, and I can't move my vowels anymore. You know, my next trip to the bathroom could spell disaster because I swallowed some of those. So now I'm retired. Actually, I will always get an F in retirement. This is what I do until I can't, and that day will come. So I've retired and I find that I'm perfect for this job, yes. Okay, so moving along, this is a little, oh, just a minute. Yeah, there's a bunch of ifs. So if olive oil is made of olives and corn oil of corn, and what is baby oil made of? But I'm not going to have time for those, but at any rate. So let's move along. Okay, just a minute. I should have something before. Yeah. Okay, so you see the little word in the middle. And Anglo-Saxon is our base. About 25% of our words are Anglo-Saxon. But then with the Norman conquest, in came French, which was essentially modern Latin. And then in the Renaissance, Latin, Greek, or Greek through Latin. So more than half our words are Latin or Greek through Latin. And if any of you are interested, if you're Latin scholars, I will be happy to send you my essay, Latina non mortua est. Latin is not yet dead. You will be amazed at the Latin in our language. But the point is, the base are these words, and they're often one syllable. So I'm going to do a little reading because I don't memorize quite like I used to, but fairly close. When you speak and write, notice what's happening, all one syllable. When you speak and write, there is no law that says you have to use big words. Short words are as good as long ones, and short old words like sun and grass and home are best of all. A lot of words, more than you might think, can meet your needs with a strength, grace, and charm that large words do not have, all one syllable. Big words can make the way dark for those who read what you write and hear what you say. Small words cast their clear light on big things. Night and day, love and hate, war and peace, life and death. Big words at times seem strange to the eye and the ear and the mind and the heart. Small words, small words are the ones we feel we have known from the time we were born, like the hearth fire that warms the home. And I love this challenge. It's like poetry of form and function, and in this case, all monosyllables. Short words are bright like sparks that grow in the night, prompt like the dawn that greets the day, sharp like the blade of a knife, hot like salt tears that scald the cheeks, quick like moths that flit from flame to flame, and terse like the dart and sting of a bee. So here is a sound rule. Use small old words where you can. If a long word says just what you want to say, do not feel fear to use it, but know that our tongue is rich in crisp, brisk, swift, short words. Make them the spine and the heart of what you speak and write. Short words are like fast friends. They will not let you down. Right on. So we're going to have a little fun with grammar, and this is going to start with, and they've put a lot of work into making this work. This is a BBC. This will, I believe, not be on the streaming or whatever, Concord Radio or something like that, because this would be, I guess, copyrighted. So I hope this will work. Listen, this has sound, and I think I'm hitting the right thing. Nope, not advanced it. I may need help. Oh. No, that went backwards. No.
I just want to say a few words about my dad, to whom I owe so much.
Excuse me.
Yes?
At the risk of sounding pedantic, it's to whom I owe so much.
Is it?
Who is a subject pronoun. Your father is evidently the object of the sentence, therefore one should use the object pronoun, namely whom. Pray continue.
Where to begin? There's so many things we all loved about.
There are so many things, plural.
First, I'd like to start by...
Firstly.
What?
Firstly is more formal, so...
I can't believe you're interrupting me. Everyone here is completely disinterested in what you have to say.
Is uninterested. Disinterested means impartial. One has to respect the departed, not to mention the English language.
More than anything else, I remember my father's sense of humour. Whether he was at work or down the local pub, he would always be holding court, and people would literally laugh their heads off.
I doubt it.
What?
I doubt they would literally laugh their heads off, that their heads would have become detached from their bodies. It seems highly unlikely that your father would ever have said anything that funny.
Vicar, you and me are going to fall out.
You and I, let's not forget our personal turnout on a day such as today.
For goodness sake, you're putting me off.
No, I'm not putting you off. That would end a sentence with a preposition. I'm being off-putting.
How dare you do this to me? I am grieving. That is my father down there.
Was. Past tense, he's dead.
You've ruined today for everybody. Now you just lay there and think about what you've done.
Not lay, lie. You shouldn't use the transitive.
About a quarter of what he said is completely untrue, but nonetheless, it's great fun. And yeah, so at any rate, I would ordinarily be wearing this underneath. Can you all see it? Okay, light on it, folks, there. I'm silently correcting your grammar. My friends would say, Rich, you don't do it silently. Kind of like the vicar there from Vicarious, the one stand-in for the priest. That's how we get Vicarious. Oh, the wonderful world of etymology. And he talked about not ending a sentence with a preposition. Completely bogus, and I'm going to try this here. Probably all of us have grown up with that rule. And the split infinitive, also bogus. They're on Latin models, but we're an Anglo-Saxon language. You can't apply Latin rules to us. Now, with the infinitive in Latin, you can't split it because it's a single word, like videre, hablar in modern Latin, Spanish. But we're Anglo-Saxon, and the same with the preposition. The prepositions are kind of folded into the inflections, the endings. But that rule doesn't apply because in Anglo-Saxon, you have separate prepositions, and often you can end with them. So I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. It's such a bogus rule that it's engendered the four most popular jokes in grammar. And some of you may know the Winston Churchill joke, where you're one of the great stylists in our language. Am I okay? Am I far enough from the mic? Yeah, it was yes. Okay. He had a sentence mangled when an officious Whitehall editor untimely ripped Macbeth, remember Macduff was untimely ripped from his mother's womb because otherwise Macbeth could not be killed by anyone of woman born. Kind of a cheap trick plot that Shakespeare did. But from the back to the front, and it was ruined, the sentence. And Churchill thundered off to this editor, this is the kind of arrant nonsense up with which I shall not put. And some of you remember 5, 6, 7 years ago, 2 prisoners escaped in northern New York near the Canadian border because they had seduced their guard, female. And so they escaped. Actually, ultimately, one died in the escape, and the other was captured and brought back. And this is a good example of 2 convicts who were using a proposition to end a sentence with. Have you heard about the little boy up at his bedroom? And his father brings up a book about Australia, and the little boy looks at his father and says, what did you bring back that book that I didn't want to be read to out of from about down under up for? That was 9, by the way. I'll slow it down. What did you what did you bring that book that I didn't want to be read to out of from about down under up for? And finally, and I have two choices for the last word, and this is the last time I'm going to be here. At this age, you learn about letting go, and it's just so meaningful to me. My friends in town, I just played pickleball today at Bow Brook indoors, and it's just wonderful. I love it here. So at any rate, and this one you may have heard of, it's the second most popular. So, a public schooler on an airplane ends up sitting next to a preppy. And to break the ice, by the way, Shakespeare, God, I'd love to come back and do Shakespeare for a night, but you can't do everything. To break the ice, that is first print citation, Shakespeare, the Archie, the public schooler, says, "What school are you at?" Well, the preppy looks down at Aquiline nose and says, "Well, I happen to attend an institution at which we are taught to know better than to conclude sentences with prepositions." And the public school kid clears his throat and says, "Well, all right then, what school are you at, asshole?" You want those jokes? Obviously, you couldn't take notes. You write me, and a few days after I get back, and actually I'll be giving pickleball lessons at a wonderful charity in San Diego very shortly after. It's just such a lovely life. But if you need those, just say, "Send me the preposition jokes." Bingo, they're there, attached, all four. Okay, let's get this back now over here. Need a prop person. There we go. A wonderful job with the AV. So now that we've done grammar, I have been usage editor of the Random House Dictionary, and you Paulies out there, you know about grammar and me. I just think it's important to pass that torch to the next generation and make it fun. Okay, pretty good, huh? So what we're going to do is, see, that's a different picture there. All right, I'm going to try forward. No, it's not what I have here, so that scares me. Help. AV, I can't change this here. Tell me what to do. AV, because I'm trying to shorten this part here. We have to get beyond that. Oh, wait a minute. Let me try that. Okay, I'm hitting this. AV, I'm hitting. Audio visionaries, I have to get to the next. This is the funniest part of the night. Thank you, Mr. So I'm hitting this, I'm hitting forward, and it's giving me a different thing. Sorry. Believe me, I'm a jinx. But we got to get to the next one. Lock the doors, please. Nobody leaves.
I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. It's because it's me. So while we're doing this, who cares about a microphone? You like this bow tie? I got this. Yeah, I got this from Bow Ties in Vermont. No, that's the beginning. So.
Hold on.
All right. So why? Because their catalog, the name of the company is Bow A-U-T-I-E-S space is beauty. So that's the second play I said I got to buy from them. It was worrying me because I was getting a different thing. So if we can just get by that darn thing. Ah!
There you go.
Unsung hero. So just some punctuation fun. A man eating lobster meets a man eating lobster. And I have a whole bunch of punctuation things like that, and I'm going to show you the star attraction. And you've probably seen that one, let's eat grandma, let's eat grandma, and let's eat comma grandma, where grandma is the second person vocative direct address. You want to have a comma before that, and that works, but let's eat grandma is not so good for grandma. Commas save lives. I'm a huge fan of the Harvard or the Oxford or the serial comma. Because so the flag is red comma, white comma, and blue. Some of you were taught no comma before the end. I don't understand that. Why does punctuation exist? To mirror the cadence of the human voice. And we don't say the flag is red, white, and blue. We say the flag is red, white, and blue. So we should write it like that. And second, without that comma, you can have confusion. I'm going to give you one of a ton of examples I have. And it is this. A man of faith, obviously, wrote as an inscription in the book, dedication rather, to my parents, comma, the Pope and Mother Teresa. No comma after Pope. So you see, we always wondered about the Pope and Mother Teresa, and now we know. So, what I'm going to show you now is not as easy as it looks. And if you want a copy of this, if you write me, and of course, it's in the book, but you write me and I'll send it to you. So here we go. All right, these are 2 love letters. Let's look at number 1. Okay. Dear Mary, I yearn for a woman who knows what love is all about. You are generous, kind, notice the commas, and thoughtful. People who are not like you admit to being useless and inferior. Could you, if only for a moment, think of our being together forever? What a cruel joke to have you come into my life only to leave again. It would be heaven denied. The possibility of seeing you again makes me giddy with joy. I face the time we are apart with great sadness. I would like to tell you that I love you, period. I can't stop thinking that you are one of the prettiest women on earth. Please let me be yours, John. Now, in the second letter, I haven't changed a word or the syntax, the word order. No changes. I've changed just the punctuation. And this one took me a few hours to do. Same words. Dear Mary, I yearn for a woman who, I'm having a little trouble saying it, I'm going to have to do this. I can't see it over here. Yeah, okay. Who knows what love is? All about you are generous, kind, and thoughtful people who are not like you. Compare it with the first. Admit to being useless and inferior. Could you, if only for a moment, think of our being together forever? What a cruel joke. To have you come into my life only to leave again, it would be heaven. Denied the possibility of seeing you again makes me giddy. With joy, I face the time we are apart. With great sadness, I would like to tell you that I love you. I can't. Stop thinking that you are one of the prettiest women on earth. Please let me be yours, John. Punctuation counts. By the way, we have an interesting situation with the Democratic ticket, and I'm not being political, but we have last names of Harris and Walz, W-A-L-Z. So what do you do with the possessive? Well, apostrophe what, though? So let's see. So there's that issue of the possessive, and how do you do it? Now, some of the press groups and so on just say when you have an S or a Z, even if it's a word, not a name, all you do is the apostrophe. I absolutely disagree. Because again, punctuation exists to mirror the cadence of the human voice. So, do we say Harris economic plans, policies? Do we say Wall's military service? I don't think so. We say Harris's, and we say Walls's. Write it as you hear it. And I've even seen things like the boss daughter and BOSS apostrophe. To me, that's very off-putting. Nobody says boss there. They say bosses. Generally, in one-syllable words, you go apostrophe and S. 2, is it Dickens novels, S, or Dickens's novels? I do Dickens's, but I understand some of you may hear it as Dickens novels. Jesus parables or Jesus's. Write it the way you hear it. And then when you get to 3, Socrates' dialogues, I don't know anybody that says Socrates' dialogues. And they certainly, with 4 syllables, don't talk about Aristophanes. So write it as you hear it, okay? So one last thing, and this shows up nicely there. They've just done such a great job with the print. I'm so grateful. So this is one of my word games, and it's 15, in which what is strange about this paragraph. So I'm going to read it, and I want you to think, what is strange about this paragraph? And then we're going to close. Savor this unusually difficult paragraph, which you now look upon. How quickly can you find out what is so common? What is so common about it? All right. It looks so. Let me finish. It looks so ordinary that you may think nothing is odd about it until you match it with most paragraphs that go on for this long. If you, smart as a whip and sharp as a tack, try your hand, strain your brain, and put your capacious mind to work studying it, you will find out. Do not solicit any additional coaching. Nobody may assist you. I think I have a semicolon there. It's what happens after a colonoscopy. You end with a semicolon. Try your colossal skill at figuring it out and coming up with a solution. Finish this task and you'll wind up happy as a clam and a lark and snug as a bug in a rug. Good luck. I'm truly rooting for you. What's strange? No E. No E, the most common letter, and it's called a lipogram, and I love I actually did that with the case for short words. So, let me see if we have contact info here, but no, that's it. Okay. I want to close with a toast to all of you. Oh, down here, sorry. Why do we call it a toast? I'm glad I asked me that. We call it a toast, and I'm not making this up because in the days of Queen Elizabeth I and William Shakespeare, school kids called him Willie Wigglestaff. But in those days, people would immerse slices of spiced toast into a tankard of ale or a goblet to improve the flavor and remove the impurities. And you're coming out here and supporting this wonderful Walker lecture, these Walker lectures, which is just to make the world a better place, and you live longer doing this. Every study shows, and I mean it. I hope tonight has sweetened your brew of life and perhaps even diminished some of the bitterness, because as the bard wrote, life is but a mingled yarn, good and ill together. So my favorite toast is, here's champagne to our real friends and real pain to our sham friends. That is called Zugma. I love word switching around, especially when it's funny. So let me just think. So it is better to leave the house and kiss your wife goodbye than to leave your wife and kiss the house goodbye. Many examples. I love those. And then I can't think of it, proceed, whatever. The odd switch at the end, I'll just give you one and then we're going to close. When I die, I'd like to die peacefully like my grandfather in his sleep, not screaming like the passengers in the bus he was driving. Paraprostoke. Oh my God. Paraprostokia, one of the 300 Greek figures of speech that I have fun with. So, as I say, champagne to our real friends to our sham friends. Thank you for being real friends of the Walker Lectures and for being real friends of this word-struck, word-besotted, word-betumb fellow. Who just loves our glorious, uproarious, notorious, victorious, outrageous, contagious, courageous, stupendous, tremendous, end-over-endless adventure that we call the English language. Love you all. I would love to have your questions out there because I'm staying till the last dog is... Okay, till the last dog is hung. So, for example, if anybody out there wants to know the name, because I know them, of 6 presidents of the United States who are not buried in the United States, well, I can give you the answer. Jimmy Carter, by the way, who will turn 100 next month, that's 1%. Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, and you get the rest of the idea, Barack Obama, so on, Donald Trump, and of course Joe Biden. We'll see what's next.